So the problem right now in the USA is what? You may ask yourself, why are we no longer like we were in, say, 1969 when we put a freaking man on the moon? On the freaking moon. Now, how do you do that? You have to have something called, it's a very simple word, a project. What the hell is a project? A project is something that has not been done before. If it's been done before, you don't call it a project, you call it an operation. Something you do repeatedly again and again and again and again, same thing over and over again. That's an operation. Now, a project is something different. You do it once, or it hasn't been done before and you're doing it perhaps something like it's been done before in the past, but now it's much different. You're doing something different. Product development is a project. A project, you will need to launch a new product. Even though, say, you're launching a new car, it's still a model 2014 instead of a 2015. It's a new thing that hasn't been done before. Okay, good. That is a project. So, in the United States, the problem is no national or very large projects that we are working on that take our heart, body, soul, and mind and fire it up in a way to where when we wake up in the morning, we want to get up out of the bed and be a piece of this project. It could be a very large project, but it has individual pieces, okay? And people who are involved in a project have a sense of passion and spirit about it because it gives us a sense of meaning and purpose, and it connects what we would like to be to what we're doing every day, which is essentially what every human being needs to do. Your aspirations here, way up in idea land, and then your actuals, task lists, tasks. You get up in the morning and do stuff that match up to that, and when this match happens, that's where the fire in the bones, the fire in the belly gets inspired. You get inspired. We get inspired. Everybody gets inspired, and everybody has a sense of life. Boom! Now, what happens when you don't have a project? Well, when you wake up in the morning, you don't want to get out of bed. When you eat, filling up that belly, you're not thinking of your body as a machine to accomplish a project. You see your body as self-indulgence in an inward look that doesn't break out and do something in the external world. It's all internal. It turns into depression. You get fat. Ha 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 ha. We've all been there probably, or a good bit of us who've lived life, at least 40 years. Might have gotten fat at one time or another because perhaps we weren't connecting our goals and aspirations to the projects that we are actually doing. So that's why America needs projects. That's why you need a project. That's why we all need projects. So going to the moon in 1969, whenever, say in the beginning of the 60s, there was this inspiring speech by JFK. It said, "We choose to go to the moon as this decade, blah, blah, blah." That fired up an entire generation of people who grew up at that time. And then by 1969, it was BAM! On the frickin' moon. What have we done since? Well, there's been certain things, perhaps, space shuttle here and there, various national projects, but what we're talking about nowadays, we're talking about in politics, what is it? Sometimes we're speaking of healthcare, unemployment. Now you see where we're going, no projects. Healthcare, unemployment, jobs. What's the problem there? Think. Got it? No projects that stir the soul, stir the passions to where you want to wake up in the morning, get out of bed, and rock and roll. So, how do we as Americans fix this? Well, think about how we've done it in the past. Transcontinental Railroad, Manifest Destiny. Unfortunately, war does do this. War is a major project. A lot of people get killed. You get a lot of weapons you got to build. You have a lot of generals and plans and all kinds of crazy stuff that happens with war, logistics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a major friggin' project. However, war is quite destructive. So we probably want to prepare for war, but we don't. In this case, we don't want to start a war in this project thing. Maybe there's some minor cases where you might want to jazz up a population if it's a good war or not really a good war. Is there a good war? Anyway, wars that are worth fighting, should I say? Okay, but I don't think we should be focusing on the war thing in this particular conversation. We're talking about something constructive. When men are not involved in something constructive, then a destructive demons of our soul start waking up, and we start wanting to break stuff, break shit, because when you break stuff, it's exciting. Violence is exciting. However, the guy on the receiving end of the violence might not think of it as good, but the guy on the giving end of it probably thinks it's very exciting. Society gets riled up in all this other passions and stuff. But anyway, so major projects, the moon landing, let's go to the moon. I mean, we could be focusing on going to Mars, right? I mean, that would be a 20 or 30 year project worth thinking about, worth getting jazzed up about. I mean, in the longer term, the better, because I mean, the moon project was about a decade or so. Kennedy made the speech in I don't know when, early 60s, and we hit the moon in 1969, and we went there a few times up until 1973, I think. So something, it has to be big, it has to be quite long term. You don't want to like sharp, let's build a skyscraper. Well, back in the old days it might have been a long term project. Nowadays it's might not be as inspiring, because it's one place in the country, and not spread out throughout the whole country. So in the US of A, we probably need some large project. I would say start with the idea on the level of let's go to Mars, something like that. It takes about 20 years to accomplish. Hell, might get it done in 15 if we have enough passion and push hard. What else? Well, let's say there's a major problem out there that needs to be solved, and it takes a lot of people involved to ignite their passions to get it done. Otherwise, it might not get done. Okay. Back in the old days, we might have great art projects. This is the Expressionist project. This is the Romantic project. When the novel was invented, they had all these guys, writing novels. It was when it was new and fresh. Nowadays we think we live in an era of decadence where all the great things have been done. But if we could focus our brains on certain arts, certain pieces that have not been done or finished or complete, maybe it's healthcare. I mean, it could be the war on cancer. And perhaps that might be a seed of an idea. Okay, the war on cancer. Cancer, we've been trying to solve this for decades and decades and decades, and not too many people have come up with a viable solution to nail it. I mean, we can do radiation therapy, we can do chemotherapy and various other things, nutrition, but it still remains a mystery, kind of like viruses. In the medical field, viruses are commonly known. We can't have a medicine that directly attacks viruses. You can only build up your immune system to attack the virus, not use a medicine to kill the virus. Similar to cancer. So perhaps we can have medical projects, and I would caution against healthcare. Healthcare is kind of one of those topics that you are engaging in something that's involved in like a sickness where everybody's sick, and there's a vested interest in people being sick and to make healthcare keep on going, right? I mean, it's kind of a the downward spiral or some process whereby there's conflicted interests. Healthcare. The guys who were in the healthcare program the administrators, have a vested interest in healthcare going up in revenue, whereas the consumers want it to go down, but it never goes down because So we don't want to get caught in that downward spiral of that sort of project, whereby the project itself will bankrupt us and not give us any benefit as it goes. Although there's some benefits a little bit to healthcare. So let's think of the war on cancer, the war on, say, viruses. That is a way to think of a possible national project. Another way to think, as I mentioned before, is the Mars program, which would take decades for us to get there. It'd be extremely difficult, high chance of failure, which is good in a major project, but also a high payoff of success. The first guy who steps on Mars is immortal, right? Even if he doesn't return, even if he dies on the way back, or if he dies on Mars, he's still immortal. As long as somebody takes a snapshot photograph of him walking on Mars, he's immortal. So there we go. So let's close out today in reviewing what is a project. A project is something that has not been done before. Remember, an operation is something that's done repeatedly, something that has been done before. A manufacturing process, you get up in the morning, you eat breakfast. It's an operation. Projects is something you have not done before. I mean, it could be similar to something that happened in the past. For example, the Mars program might kind of sort of look like the Moon program in structure, but it's different. It's not been done before. Okay? Project. And of course, as I said, it has to make you wake up in the morning, want to get out of bed and go out there and stir up your passions to conquer the world, as it were. All right. So that's what we need in the United States of America now. We need projects. We need a national project like Manifest Destiny, the conquest of the West. We will go from the East Coast to the West Coast, and that's going to be our nation. We're that big. But that's been done in the 1880s. That was complete. Manifest Destiny. We don't want to get into the wars unless we have to, okay? But we want to get into some large projects, okay? So that's it. That's what we need to start thinking about as Americans, okay? I mean, we don't think about this stuff anymore than we have lost our way, okay? We don't want to lose our way. Maybe we have lost our way. And every once in a while, nations go through a period where, if we've done all this stuff before, we've done great stuff, like Britain. Then suddenly there's a period of decline, okay? And people lose their way, and then people start infighting and fighting amongst themselves. Americans are fighting Americans, or the British, Empire collapsed in the 1940s, 1950s. The French Empire collapsed, and, there was a lot of internal churning of, infighting. But to stop that internal fighting where we turn on each other and fight each other, the national project unites us, and we have some external thing to go after. Doesn't necessarily have to be an enemy. Germany in the two world wars, but something that not necessarily we fight against, but we're fighting, say, nature in this case. Say the moon landing, the Mars project, war on cancer. The war on viruses, if we want to get into that sort of thing as a nation, that would be conquest of nature. So conquest of nature more or less started with the scientific revolution. Scientific revolution is essentially a conquest of nature. It's not necessarily figuring out stuff just to have fun. It is, the physical world is challenging. There are wild beasts out there that want to eat us. Let's conquer the physical world using as much as we can use mathematics and physical laws and postulates and repeatable processes to conquer nature, to where we always have food, we always have heat, we always have stuff we need for life to live and to thrive. Okay, so projects. We need a mass national project. We need to have it to be, let's hope not war, but it could be in some crazy cases if some evil empire arises and we have to fight it. So war could be, a possibility. However, it's preferably a mass project that we need to conquer nature. We all know wars will be around forever, so we can't ignore the fact that we'll probably have to be involved in major wars. But let's, as a country, let's focus on the conquest of nature projects. That's all we have for today. Freddie Martini here. Until next time, be good out there and stir up your passions. Get yourself goals, get yourself projects personally, and then when we get the nation in order, when the nation gets this project, then we can all come together and conquer nature.